where Justice Minister David Lametti is announcing new details about bail reform. Let's listen.
À jouer pour que les Canadiens se sentent en sécurité partout au pays.
Throughout the country,
Et nous sommes conscients qu'ils sont trop.
we are aware that too many Canadians do not feel safe.
Pandemic after 3 years of anxiety and isolation. And at the same time, I know, and I think all of us know, that there is a feeling that crime has worked its way into places we all thought were safe. On the subway going to work, or walking down the street during the day, or grabbing a coffee. Pour les courageux membres des forces policières.
For the courageous members of police services, going to work seems more dangerous than it used to be. This is a heavy weight that they have to bear, them and their families both. Canada is a safe country, and I think that we are all aware that we are fortunate to live here. The number of crimes is lower today than 20 years ago. But that doesn't mean that we can't do better.
Tackle crime, and you expect us to tackle the causes of crime. You want our laws to be effective in maintaining public safety while staying true to the values enshrined in the Charter of Rights. You want us to work with all levels of government to ensure that your communities are safe and our justice system is working the way it should. That makes perfect sense. Administration of justice is a shared responsibility with the provinces and territories. Nous avons été clairs avec vous.
We've been clear. Our government would do its share on the way the justice system treats violent reoffenders. This means reforming the Act. This explains why we are so numerous here today. I'm going to begin with legal reform. Early this morning, I tabled Bill C-48. C-48 brings specific changes to sections on bail under the Criminal Code that targets violent reoffenders. We also want to put an end to violent crime and to improve the justice system for intimate partner violence victims.
Responds directly to concerns raised by the premiers, as well as police, mayors, and victims' advocates. It flows from the work that we have been doing together with the provinces and territories for several months now, highlighted by our most recent meeting in March, where I committed to bring legislation forward to reform the bail system. We also had the benefit of work that was done by the Justice Committee, and both Chair Sarai and Parliamentary Secretary Ananda Sangri were part of that. The work has been refreshingly nonpartisan, with officials and politicians focused on solutions to improve public safety. That's exactly what you would expect of us. So what's in C-48? This legislation amends the Criminal Code to do several things. First, it creates a new reverse onus targeting repeat violent offenders involving weapons. Weapons including firearms, including knives, and including bear spray. Second, it adds specific firearms offenses to an existing reverse onus provision, and these are often offenses linked to organized crime. Third, it strengthens the existing reverse onus regime addressing intimate partner violence, which we first introduced in former Bill C-75. And finally, it requires courts to consider an accused person's history of convictions for violence, as well as community safety and security concerns when making a bail decision. Crucially, these proposed reforms signal that repeat violent offenders who pose a risk to community safety should not be released while awaiting trial. The goal of Bill C-48 is improving public safety. At the same time, we want to make sure that these law reforms do not make things worse for Indigenous people, Black people, and other vulnerable groups who we know are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. This was recognized in the communique following our FPT meeting in March, and I know this is a priority that my provincial and territorial counterparts share. I want to re-emphasize the important role that the provinces and territories have played here. Several provinces have already taken steps to address the bail system within their jurisdictions. Ontario has invested $112 million to help ensure that repeat violent offenders comply with their bail conditions. Manitoba has increased support for its criminal organization high-risk offender unit, including funds for a full-time psychologist, additional probation officers, and community corrections workers. Saskatchewan has released an updated provincial bail policy that provincial Crown prosecutors must follow in cases involving high-risk offences and intimate partner violence, as well as cases involving children and vulnerable adults. And British Columbia, a leader in this regard, has the provincial government introducing a revised bail policy that directs Crown prosecutors to seek detention in cases involving repeat violent offenders. This is exactly how our federation is supposed to work. Each order of government doing its part, working together to ensure that you are safe in your communities. Le crime est un enjeu incroyablement complexe.
Crime is a complex issue. These reforms are only part of the efforts made to improve our justice system, to have an efficient system responding to the needs of Canadians. We understand that the best way to protect our communities is to prevent crime. This means to deal with the underlying causes of crime. We have to understand why someone commits a crime and find ways to make this person change their trajectory.
That make our justice system better equipped to get people the help they need to leave the criminal justice system and never need to come back. We've seen success with drug treatment courts, community justice centers, and the Indigenous Justice Program, and more. We'll hear more from my colleagues about critical investments in crime prevention and anti-gun and gang prevention. And we're working to ensure that people get access to the mental health and addiction supports that they need. Strong laws, crime prevention, supports for vulnerable people. These are the three pillars of good criminal justice policy. Together, they help make our communities safer. C-48 is one part of that commitment to your safety. It delivers on the promise I made to my provincial and territorial counterparts to reform our bail laws. It's informed by what we heard from premiers, from ministers, from mayors, from police, and from Parliament. It's important to see this bill make its way through Parliament quickly. I firmly hope this bill will receive unanimous consent. Canadians expect us to act, and I trust my friends in the House and Senate view things in exactly the same way. Thank you. Merci. I would now invite Minister Mendicino to say a few words.
Merci, David. Thank you as well for the Indigenous land acknowledgement, and welcome to all of our colleagues. Today's announcement is about keeping our communities safe. The bail reform legislation we've just tabled in the House of Commons zeroes in on repeat violent offenders who use guns and other weapons. With this proposed law, the onus will now be on them to justify to a court why they shouldn't remain in custody as they wait for a trial. In preparing this legislation, as you've heard Minister Lametti explain, we engaged with provincial, territorial, and municipal partners, as well as police leaders and community advocates. And within our own government, we have worked very closely with our colleagues right across the benches, including, and I'd like to single out Minister Bennett, who does extraordinary work in advancing our mental health strategy, and that cuts right to the core of the way in which we can stop crime and loss and tragedy before it occurs. And I look forward to ongoing collaboration with you, Carolyn. Bill C-48 reflects the broad consensus that we heard. We must strengthen our bail system to keep communities safer. For workers riding a bus or a subway, for parents who send their kids to school, for families who are going for a walk in their own neighborhood. This legislation is about them and indeed all Canadians so that we can keep them safe. And it will help to separate those offenders from the community to achieve that goal. Bill C-48 is one part of our comprehensive strategy to tackle gun crime and keep Canadians safe. Our plan is based on 3 priorities: strong laws, strong borders, and strong prevention. On strong laws, in addition to today's bail reform legislation, we are taking major steps forward through Bill C-21. 3 years ago, this government banned assault-style firearms like the AR-15, which were designed for a battlefield and have no place in our communities. We're now taking steps to strengthen that national ban, as recommended by the Mass Casualty Commission out of Nova Scotia. And just about a year ago, we banned the sale, purchase, and transfer of handguns, which have become the #1 type of gun used in homicides. These are 2 key elements of Bill C-21, Canada's most significant gun control legislation in a generation. The legislation will also raise maximum sentences against gun traffickers and introduce red and yellow flag laws to address the relationship between domestic abuse and gun violence, which disproportionately impacts women and young girls. As we speak, Bill C-21 is being debated in the House, and we're making good progress with the support of the NDP and the Bloc Québécois. On strong borders and enforcement, we've invested almost $500 million into the Canada Border Services Agency in the last 2 years alone. We've also deepened our cooperation with the United States to fight gun smuggling and trafficking. And just last week, we announced nearly $400 million federal dollars to give police the additional resources they need in the fight against gun and gang violence. And I would be remiss if I did not again extend our condolences to OPP Officer Mueller, the latest member of the policing community to be killed in the line of duty. Finally, our plan also includes strong prevention strategies. And this is headlined by the $250 million Building Safer Communities Fund, which helps young people make good choices and to stop gun crime before it starts. And our plan is beginning to work. StatsCan reports that gun crime is trending downwards, including in Toronto, which marked a 22% decrease between the years 2020 and 2021. But we can't stop there. L'annonce d'aujourd'hui est l'un des éléments.
Today's announcement is part of our government's overall plan to ensure the safety of Canadians. This begins with solid borders and support to police services, with additional resources, reinforced cooperation with the U.S. to fight against contraband, and not later than last week, $400 million to fight against violence. Strong reforms, such as today's banning assault weapons, and C-21, the most important action by Canada with regards to controlling guns in more than a generation. This involves solid prevention strategies to stop gun crimes.
What we will continue to do is to advance a plan that focuses on strong laws, strong borders, and strong prevention. When it comes to keeping Canadians safe, you can't pick and choose one of these priorities. You have to advance all 3. And by advancing this legislation today around bail reform and in companionship with the other steps that we are taking through Bill C-21, the investments we are making to support law enforcement in our communities and our borders, and perhaps most importantly, to continue to advance strategies which go right to the root causes of gun crime, we can stop tragedy and loss which is caused by violent offenses and other gun crimes before they even start. And with that, I will now turn it back over to our moderator for the next speaker. Merci.
Thank you, ministers. Yeah, so we'll do one question, one follow-up. We'll start with reporters in the room. If you want to ask a question, just lock on.
We've been listening to Justice Minister David Lametti announcing new details of the bail reform bill. Specifically, Bill C-48 proposes to create a new reverse onus targeting repeat violent offenders involving weapons. It's also expanding the list of firearm offenses that trigger a reverse onus. Much more to this new reform bill.